This story of mine is a little hard to narrate. I don't even recognize myself anymore. In the space of about 5 years, I have become everything I vowed never to become. Now, this is my story. In 2017, I gained admission into a prestigious university, and a year later, I unfortunately lost both parents in a car accident. They were returning from a funeral, and they both lost their lives. The news was so devastating to me, and for that matter, that semester, I failed 2 of my papers. My 4 siblings were shared amongst my uncles and aunties to take care of. Very often, they would call me at school and cry on the phone that they were hungry or their caretaker was abusing them. It was one issue after the other. As the firstborn, I couldn't even concentrate in school because I felt responsible for my younger siblings and I wished I could rescue them from suffering. Our lastborn has autism and he was staying with one of my father's sisters. It was the same place I usually stayed during vacations. My brother was always neglected and would often cry without anyone attending to him. It made me miss my mother so much because she had studied his condition from the moment he was born and knew how well to handle him. Whenever I came to stay with them and it was time for me to go, my brother never wanted me to leave. He would cling to me so tightly, and I usually couldn't hold back my tears. On one occasion, I begged my auntie to try and give him a little bit more attention, and she replied that I was a very ungrateful girl for suggesting that. We were orphans and we should be grateful that we had roof over our head. When I returned to school, I began looking for ways to make money to be able to free my siblings in future. Not all of our aunties and uncles were treating us badly though. My mother's brother was the best. He would often call and check up on us and see how we were doing. I couldn't say our other caretakers are bad people per se, because I know how difficult it is to raise your own kids and add that responsibility of raising the children of your late siblings as well. But I also felt the pain of my siblings. I think any firstborn in my situation would have felt that same feeling. I then started selling clothes, bags, and shoes on campus to sustain me. In the midst of all that hardship, a friend of mine introduced me to a lecturer. She told me that the man was very wealthy, and apart from lecturing, he owned huge farms and has many workers. She told me that he could help me get a place at the farm to work. He told me he could help me get a scholarship because I was struggling to pay my fees and also had some outstanding papers to rewrite. I went to his office one time with my friend, and I must admit he was a really good-looking man. At that time, I honestly did not think that his intentions were sexual. I have previously tried to apply for scholarships, but because I failed 2 papers, my GPA reduced and I didn't make the cut, so I gave up on that. I believe this lecturer was capable of helping me get a scholarship if I narrated my story to him. He spoke to me in a very professional way while my friend was still in the office and told me he runs a scholarship program for needy students like myself. He then gave me a different time to come and see him in his office. When I went to him alone, however, the conversation was entirely different. He started telling me about the number of students whose fees he pays and the need to understand that life is a give and take. He said, I have something he wants and he has something I need. He gave me his personal contact and told me to call him anytime. Then he got up from his desk and started making advances towards me. He tried to lift up my skirt, but I had had enough and I got up and left the office. When I got to my room, my roommates were not around and I cried bitterly. I wasn't done paying my school fees. I also had to buy some handouts for my course and pay for my papers I was rewriting. In addition to that, I wasn't having enough money to sustain me for the rest of that month, even though I was eating once a day. I fought the urge to call the lecturer for 3 whole weeks, but when I finally used up all the money I had in my possession, I realized that I had come to the end of my rope. I felt like I was hanging. I called him with tears in my eyes, and he drove to my hostel to pick me up. To clarify, he wasn't actually my lecturer. He was teaching a different course. That day, he took me to an apartment beyond Kasoa, and he had his way with me. Apparently, that place was a secret apartment that he only brought his special students to. After that one-time encounter, he sent me a large sum of money with which I paid all my expenses. I even sent something to my siblings to cater for their basic needs. The following weekend, the cycle repeated. This time, I boarded a vehicle from campus and met him halfway. This happened almost every week until I recently told him I was done. I have created separate mutual funds for all my siblings and myself. The returns we are getting are enough to sustain us monthly. I also rekindled my clothing business. I have rented a shop and I have an employee who sells for me. After I completed university a year ago, I rented a 2-bedroom for my siblings and I, and we now stay there. I pay their school fees as well. I did all this with the weekly amount I was receiving from my sugar daddy. It hasn't come easily. Despite looking decent on the outside, the man is a pervert. He makes demands of me and places huge amounts of money on them. He would tell me to allow him to spit in my mouth for 1,000 Ghana cedis. Then he would spank me with a cane for 2,000 Ghana cedis. Other times he would choke me with his thing for 3,000 Ghana cedis, and on and on and on it went. If I play the game well, I could leave with about 15,000 Ghana cedis every week. I learned that apart from his farm and lecturing, he was on the board of big institutions and he was enjoying a lot of allowances. So giving out such amounts was peanuts to him. I want to be free from him now because I have established myself. I plan on buying a second shop next to my current shop to start selling shoes. I have budgeted for that and everything. I have also bought a plot of land and I am starting a building project soon. The unfortunate thing, which is the reason I am sharing my story, is that when I informed him that I was done with him, he told me that none of his girls ever leaves him. I told him I was done with him and I was done with university and I wanted my freedom. He said any girl who leaves him after he has invested money in her will meet her untimely death. This has really scared me. My friend who introduced us told me she sleeps with another friend of his and they have an arrangement much like ours. Apparently, these old men all know each other and this is what they do. You have to be with them until they don't want you anymore, or else they will find a way to end your life simply because you know too much about them. My friend claims that they have means and ways of finding you if you ever try to run. I feel so trapped and unhappy. Though I may look happy on the outside, I want to advise all girls to never succumb to the pressure of sleeping with sugar daddies for money. It doesn't end well.